Hello and welcome into another live Locked On Wolves postcast following a playoff game. The Timberwolves, of course, fell to the Memphis Grizzlies in Game 5, the pivotal Game 5 in the series. I'm here with Chelanga from Zone Coverage and the CND NBA show. We're going to talk about what happened in this one. Let's start with the end of the game. This was it was a fun game. The Timberwolves led for much of it. We'll get to a couple of the things that we saw kind of along the way in this one. But let's start with what happened at the end. The Timberwolves down 3 in the final seconds after leading for much of the game. They call a timeout. They get Anthony Edwards a good look in the corner. He ties the game. Then the Grizzlies come back after a timeout. Ja Morant scores the game-winning bucket with the second left. What were your thoughts over those final couple of possessions?
Well, it was really good to see Ant knock down that huge clutch shot to tie the game. And in my mind, I'm thinking, great, now the game is going to go into overtime. And, once we're in overtime, it's anyone's game,
Right.
Unfortunately, as good of a shot as Ant made, he then came back on the defensive end and really, irresponsibly gambled for a steal that he really didn't have a shot at. And Ja Morant, all to his credit, he was huge down the stretch. His big three at the 1 minute mark to put the Grizzlies ahead was sort of the pivotal shot, and he ended up winning them the game with a tough contested layup.
Yeah, and I think so. The obvious thing there is Anthony Edwards gambled when he shouldn't have on an inbound. Like, it's the one thing you can't do there, right? I mean, you absolutely cannot. You can't gamble. You just got to play solid defense for 3 seconds. You just were the hero on the made shot, and you're about to send it to overtime. And to me, I think the larger thing there is the way the Wolves defended Ja Morant down the stretch in this game, and they, defended him pretty well in the first half. I don't have in front of me what he did in the first half of this game, but he only had like 4 or 5 made shots at halftime, I think, and was relatively quiet, not as quiet as he was in Game 4, of course. But then in the second half, it seemed like the Timberwolves, first of all, transition defense was miserable, which of course has been an issue for much of the season for the Wolves. Really, really bad. And if you can't play transition defense in Game 5 of a playoff series, like, I don't know what to say. I mean, you gotta get back in defense. You gotta match up. You gotta talk. You gotta, not foul, but you gotta do all the other stuff first, so you're even in a position to commit a foul. And that was an issue. And then in the half court, the Grizzlies were clearly trying to get D'Angelo Russell on Ja Morant as much as possible. It's not. They've been doing that for basically the entire series. I understand why they're doing it. The Wolves were letting them do it a little bit too easily. And actually, on some possessions, the point of attack defense wasn't too bad. You go back and look at the final 5 minutes of the game. The initial point of attack defense was okay, but then the Grizzlies just swung the ball around the perimeter once, got it back to Ja, and he had single coverage against somebody that he, a lot of times D'Angelo Russell, sometimes Anthony Edwards, a player he could beat one-on-one. And the recovery defense for Minnesota wasn't good, and Ja really just killed them in the fourth quarter of this game.
Well, I think all series long, outside of Game 1, they've done a really good job on Ja Morant. Even tonight, he shot 9 of 22.
Yeah.
The problem is, especially down the stretch, he kept getting to the free throw line. He ended up with 17 attempts, 11 of 17. That's something that he's been struggling. He has not been able to convert at the free throw line. But he's able to affect the game in so many ways, even if his shot isn't falling. And with great players, it's only a matter of time. And in the biggest moments, he showed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, like you said, the Wolves have done a good job on Ja overall in this series. So that's, I think, what made it that much more frustrating. That down the stretch, like you said, good players, great players stepping up, and that's exactly what happened. I think the Timberwolves, another interesting thing for me in this one was the Timberwolves rotations were a little bit, and not in a bad way. I think this was just interesting. The Wolves did some different stuff with their rotation. They played a long stretch in the second quarter with mostly with none of the big three on the floor. And D'Angelo Russell actually played as good as he's played all series, in my opinion, in this game. He had some bad defensive possessions, but he was more even. Karl-Anthony Towns had a good game. Ant had a good game. I just think the rotations were solid and different. And I appreciate that Chris Finch was trying some different things. And Karl-Anthony Towns, to me, was really good overall in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved to see that a 5-man bench unit could work in a playoff series like this, because I feel like that's sort of been an Achilles heel of the Wolves all season, is the bench consistency. For much of the season, the Wolves bench had one of the worst net ratings in the league. They were consistently negative. And so the fact that Finch could get away with that for long stretches this game was awesome. And I think we've talked a lot about the Grizzlies and the Wolves mirroring each other a lot in this series. And there we see, Minnesota mirroring Memphis as this, deep team that can play a lot of different players. I just think the way that these two teams are battling and matching each other, blow for blow is, it's an incredible first round series.
Yeah, agreed. I have a couple more key points I want to get to. First, let's talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. If you're looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA, you have to check out the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I absolutely love Prize Picks. I know you will too if you try it out. You can pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under in their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. You can do it in 60 seconds or less. And the best part is you could do mixed sport entries. So like, for instance, on a night like tonight, Timberwolves playing, Twins playing. If you're a Twins fan, you can do karl-anthony Towns over on points, Byron Buxton over on home runs, or whatever it is you want to do. You can, in football season, you can throw in NFL, college football, MMA, soccer, anything like that. And they also have any prop you can think of. So for basketball, you can even do like steals. It's not just points scored or anything like that. For a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users, or all of our listeners, I should say. Listeners get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. But you have to use the code NBA. It's an exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. All right, Chelanga, a couple things I want to get to. Number one, rebounding. We said coming into the series, this would be a key because Memphis was the league's best offensive rebounding team. They were a top 10 defensive rebounding team by rate in the regular season. The Timberwolves obviously really struggle on the defensive glass, a bottom 3 team in the league rebounding-wise on the defensive side of the ball. And the Wolves, for the most part, have done a pretty good job against Memphis, including Game 4, which, of course, they won. But in this one, the Timberwolves gave up 18 offensive rebounds. Overall, they were a minus 11 in the total rebound category. The Wolves themselves, who, again, should be a pretty good offensive rebounding team and were in the regular season, only grabbed 6 offensive rebounds. Memphis dominated the glass.
Yeah, they did. And, the big Ja Morant shot came off of an offensive rebound.
Yeah.
Brandon Clark has been having himself like a series. It seems like there is little that the Timberwolves can do, especially down the stretch, to keep him off the glass. The way that he is attacking aggressively, reading the ball as it comes off the rim, it feels like the Wolves have their own Brandon Clark in Jared Vanderbilt, but he's just not able to be effective the same way that Clark has just been eating on the offensive glass,
Yeah, go back to Clark 21 and 15 in 37 minutes. I said on Locked On Wolves the other day, actually, I think it was just yesterday's or today's show, actually, Tuesday's show, that the Grizzlies need to lean on Brandon Clark. If I'm the Grizzlies, I scrap the Xavier Tillman stuff and I just go Brandon Clark as much as possible and, pair him with Jaren Jackson Jr. Of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. is seeing how fast he can foul out. He went from 26 minutes to 23 minutes to 18 minutes, fouled out in 18 minutes. And his last foul, by the way, was such an obvious foul on the karl-anthony Towns 3-point attempt. He hit him right on the arm. I think he was more just upset with himself for doing that. And you kind of, in the moment, felt for him as a player and as a person because it was such a dumb foul. But it looked like he was complaining. It was just such an obvious foul. But anyway, Brandon Clark is phenomenal. He was the reason Memphis beat the Wolves in the first regular season game this year, way back in late October, early November, the game the Wolves led by like 15 or 16 going to the fourth quarter. Clark had like he had a double-double, but he had some crazy quarter in the second half of that game. And that's basically what he did in this game. He had 9 offensive rebounds. He added in 3 assists and a block for good measure, shot 9 of 14, and was just really, really good. And the Timberwolves, the Timberwolves don't have a player like him, right? The closest thing is like a Jared Vanderbilt, but of course Clark is so much more talented offensively, and is just a more effective player. But the Wolves don't have the Brandon Clark type player, and he's the sort of player that gives the Wolves all kinds of trouble. His energy level as well is really off the charts.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about karl-anthony Towns? I know you brought him up earlier.
Yeah.
He did have a good game. I thought it was really disappointing that he didn't get looks down the stretch. I mean, he had that one big 3, but that was his like solo shot in like 3 minutes of crunch time basketball, which feels like a big error on the Timberwolves' parts. And I don't know whether that's a Chris Finch thing or if it's just D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, trying to step up in the big moment. But Karl was having a great game, and he was really effective from the 3-point line. It really felt like he should have gotten some touches down the stretch.
Yeah, and in game four, the difference between game three and game four, we talked about it a little bit immediately on this same live postcast after game four, is that the Wolves made adjustments to get Towns the ball in the middle of the floor more often. They did more stuff with him off the ball. They did more false actions to try and get the ball to him in more advantageous positions where they weren't just force feeding him or they weren't just dumping it into him in the low post and allowing the Grizzlies to double and triple team him. And they did that for much of this game too. I mean, they were running a lot of stuff with Towns running to the middle of the floor, posting up at the nail essentially, and then they could do a ton of stuff off of that. They did it really all the way through the third quarter. And he was driving to the paint, especially early in the game. He was facilitating for teammates, had a couple of nice drives and dishes. He had a couple nice drives from the perimeter too, and he shot 5 of 7, as you alluded to, on 3-pointers. He was also a perfect 9 of 9 at the line. He did have problems with turnovers in this game, but they were also trying to run their offense through him more early.
Mm-hmm.
And then late, you're right. It was a little bit too much D'Angelo Russell. Okay, he's the guy who, we know he's the late game guy. I can appreciate that D'Lo can get off a shot in isolation and can win the game for you. That is possible, but that's not what the go-to should be all the time, right? The go-to should be an actual set where Towns you're going to run the offense through Towns, or you're going to get a play call, obviously after a timeout, sideline out of bounds play. When you get not open, but Anta shot in the corner where he ties the game with 3 seconds left. Actions like that, where you're actually getting your best 2 most dynamic offensive players, Edwards and Towns, the ball, seem to make a lot more sense than allowing D'Lo to go one-on-one and shoot, a contested mid-range jumper, which, he's pretty good at that shot, but that's still not a better shot than almost anything that Ant or Cat would do in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the Wolves very much could have, and I think should have won this game. Their game plan against the Grizzlies is tight. I mean, like we said, they're doing great work against Ja Morant. They are getting beat on the glass, but at the end of the day, it comes down to their end of game execution because, I mean, I feel like these games, for the most part, they've been really hard fought and they've been close. And it's all about who's going to execute better down the stretch. And the Wolves have struggled with that, for a lot of the season. And this is twice now that they've had a come from behind loss to the Grizzlies.
Yeah. All right, let's do final thoughts here in a second. First, though, let's talk about betonline.net. The Timberwolves might have lost, but they did cover, for whatever that's worth. They were 6-point underdogs on the road at Memphis in Game 5, according to betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the NBA playoffs and the start of the MLB season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Final thoughts as we head into Friday night, Target Center. I don't know if they've announced the game time yet. Before tonight's game, they hadn't. But Friday night at Target Center, obviously a winner go home for the Timberwolves Game 6. What are your initial thoughts? What are you looking for? How do the Wolves bounce back from this on Friday night?
I mean, I think that they got to stick to the plan. Like I said, it's really working. I think another piece that the Timberwolves are really missing is D'Angelo Russell's offense. Before tonight, he was shooting 30% from the field on the series. He shot 40% tonight, 4 of 10, which I think will boost that percentage up a little bit. But by no means is that good enough for like one of the best offensive players on this team. He's just not affecting the game in a way that is, anywhere near what we expect from him.
Yeah, agreed. I think what we talked about already, the rebounding, the Timberwolves have rebounded the ball better, of course, in the games that they won, with the exception of Game 1, in which they got beat on the glass and at the free throw line. And then also free throw shooting. One of the reasons the Wolves were ahead for much of this game is Memphis shot under 67% at the free throw line. And I joked about this on Twitter yesterday, I think, is that like Memphis is a bottom 3 free throw shooting team all year in terms of percentage. And they complain a lot about free throw shooting, about getting to the line. They just need to make their free throws. The Wolves attempted 15 less free throws in this game and only made 5 less. So they were only a -5 at the line despite attempting 15 less free throws. So the Wolves need to do a better job in that regard, obviously. They committed 10 more fouls than Memphis in this game. So that same discrepancy that the Grizzlies were really upset about from the last game, we saw the same thing in this game, just flipped it, right? The home
Absolutely.
team, again, ended up with more free throws. So we'll see what happens in Game 6. We'll keep an eye on all that. And, of course, we'll do the live postcast following the game Friday night as well. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves, and then check out everything Chelanga does over at Zone Coverage and also the CND NBA podcast. Thanks, Chelanga.
Yeah, thanks, man. Peace.